By mid-morning, the sandstone courthouse was already sweating. Layers of August heat pressed against sealed windows, and even the ceiling fans, ancient iron relics from some forgotten renovation, couldn't keep up. Reporters fanned themselves with folded subpoenas, certain they'd spend the day cataloging routine objections. Security had locked phone pouches, confiscated power banks, and warned everyone there would be no second chances for sneaky recordings. The public gallery buzzed anyway, convinced that the next sensational twist in the Sean Diddy Combs trial had to be minutes away. Yet nobody foresaw the thunder that was about to roll through the room. Without escort or announcement, Jonathan DaBaby Kirk appeared at the rear doors. He wore an obsidian black suit, pressed so sharp it seemed to slice the glare, and carried no jewelry, no entourage, not even a publicist's reassuring shadow. His arrival clipped every conversation mid-sentence. People forgot they were breathing. Only when he reached the witness box did the collective exhale ripple across those wooden pews. The bailiff swore him in. The judge, a woman famed for her glacier-cool temperament, looked almost curious. Prosecutors straightened their jackets, while Diddy's defense team leaned close enough to whisper into each other's collarbones. Combs himself sat rigid, tapping one polished thumbnail against the desk like a metronome for nerves. He didn't bother to turn until DaBaby dropped the first grenade, asked whether he possessed relevant knowledge about Mr. Combs. Kirk didn't reply with a routine yes, Your Honor. He bent toward the microphone and uttered a single name, Beyoncé. Sound fled the chamber. Pens froze halfway across paper. One journalist's coffee slipped from her grasp and splashed silently onto the carpet. Even the clock seemed to stall between ticks, not because Beyoncé had been linked to crime. She hadn't, but because her brand was as carefully guarded as a crown jewel. For that name to land inside a criminal courtroom felt like watching a marble statue crack. Kirk's voice never wavered. I have footage, he said. It changes everything. The prosecutor nearly lurched forward. A paralegal fumbled for a legal pad she'd abandoned 3 chairs away. Across the aisle, Diddy's jaw clenched hard enough to pulse. The judge requested clarity. Kirk obliged. He described a backstage corridor at the 2015 BET Hip Hop Awards, an area typically swept clean of stray staff. When headliners moved between dressing rooms, he'd been late for a rehearsal slot, hustling down that hallway when he witnessed a moment he wasn't meant to see. Combs resting a hand on Beyoncé's lower back, murmuring something that made her eyes crease in a private smile. No security detail hovered, no lenses flashed. Everything about the posture suggested familiarity deeper than business. Kirk didn't label it scandalous. He called it possession energy, the way a predator plants a flag without asking permission. People keep wondering who Diddy controlled, he told 12 stunned jurors, but none of y'all bothered to ask who let him get that close in the first place. He continued. A security guard, terminated 2 weeks after that award show, slipped him the hallway video. No audio, just body language. Later, a patchwork of still photographs surfaced, snapped at yacht parties, gala after hours, and one blurry shot capturing Combs kissing Beyoncé's cheek, while Jay-Z stood 10 feet away. Unreadable. Defense counsel objected, claiming publicity stunt. The objection barely echoed before the judge overruled, reminding everyone that witness credibility would be weighed by the jury, not by courtroom theatrics. Kirk nodded once, like a boxer accepting the next round, and drilled deeper. After that clip, patterns shifted, he explained. No more Rock Nation brunch laughter with Combs. Joint ventures dried up. Events that used to seat them side by side suddenly kept 3 tables distance. He suggested that Jay-Z had glimpsed the footage, perhaps only a fragment, then moved mountains quietly. Doors closed. Invitations evaporated. Not retaliation, Kirk argued, but quarantine. A ripple of realization traveled through spectators. If Beyoncé, the industry's most fortified fortress, required that sort of silent recalibration, then how many less powerful artists had surrendered their agency completely? Kirk tightened the screw. He recounted an exclusive Hollywood Hills after-party in 2016. Beyoncé arrived escorted by 2 bodyguards who stayed at the entrance. Diddy, already seated in a roped-off lounge, beckoned. Within minutes, she joined him. No overt misconduct, just the room sagging as if gravity recalibrated around the pair. A fellow guest murmured, "They still got that thing, huh?" Kirk asked what thing meant. The guest shrugged, replying, "Diddy and B? That goes back." Was Beyoncé under control? No, Kirk clarified, but she was under pressure, the kind that grows when a man stockpiles moments he can twist into leverage. Stories, clips, maybe shadows of nothing at all, yet powerful enough when whispered in the right ear. He then addressed the so-called wall of silence. Beyoncé's machine, he said, could suffocate journalistic curiosity before the first question left a newsroom inbox. One writer he knew had been iced out of music media after pitching an article connecting early career Beyoncé to Combs' run events. The pitch never reached an editor. The blacklist arrived anyway. In late 2017, Kirk claimed, a hush-hush PR summit convened to smother rumors of a compromising video, floating through industry servers. He hadn't attended, but a participant relayed the takeaway. We do not discuss this ever again. Court recessed for lunch, yet nobody tasted their sandwiches. Outside, television commentators rejected cameras. Their own producers worried a single misphrased sentence might attract iron-fisted cease and desist letters. Inside, Combs sat motionless, head low, perhaps calculating which of his allies might begin to pivot away, now that Beyoncé's name sat in the official transcript. When proceedings resumed, Kirk stepped back into the witness box with an ease that suggested he'd never left. The prosecutor asked him to describe the media files in meticulous detail for the record. He obliged. A 1080p backstage feed, timestamp overlay, a crimson-lit corridor lined by dressing room doors. Beyoncé appears first, shoulders relaxed, makeup half done as though she ducked out for air. Combs enters frame seconds later, gait deliberate, hand to waist, a whisper, her laugh, soft genuine, a brief lean-in that ends the instant a third party's silhouette flickers around the corner. Does that prove criminal wrongdoing? No. What it proves, Kirk insisted, is belief. Combs' belief that he could blur professional and private realms with the most protected woman in music and face zero consequence. The jury absorbed each sentence, like scribes etching marble. The press gallery wriggled, sensing history. Kirk wasn't finished. Another file exists, he revealed, a zip archive of photos from private soirees. He refused to name the current custodian. They're terrified, he said, and I'm not dragging them into this crossfire. Defense lawyers pounced. Why should we trust a rapper chasing headlines? Kirk answered with a half smile. Because I don't need clout. I sold millions before I ever mentioned this. His gaze flicked to the foreperson. I could have auctioned that footage for a mountain of cash. Instead, I walked into sworn testimony, where lying lands you in prison. Ask yourselves why. The judge instructed jurors to ignore monetary hypotheticals, yet the challenge hung in the air like cordite, truth, or publicity gambit. Either way, the footage felt dangerously real. The next afternoon, prosecutors began mapping the alleged ripple effects. Excel charts of canceled brunch invitations, email threads in which Roc Nation staff politely declined every Combs-affiliated charity gala for 3 straight years. Defense argued coincidence, scheduling conflicts, market forces. The pattern, though, looked too surgical to dismiss. Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, Beyoncé's ordinarily impenetrable camp faltered. Parkwood executives scheduled emergency conference calls across time zones, probing for worst-case scenarios. What exactly did that hallway clip show? Did it suggest manipulation? Or could tabloids twist it into insinuations of consent? The nuance was existential. If public opinion sensed coercion, sympathy might flood in. If it smelled complicity, the hive could turn feral. Social platforms ignited. Hashtag split fandoms into warring colonies. One side dubbed Kirk a hero, exposing the rot. The other called him a parasite leeching off black royalty. Verified accounts posted long threads analyzing posture, eye lines, elbow angles from grainy stills that hadn't even been released, only described. Speculation metastasized faster than Parkwood's PR could throttle it. Jay-Z's silence felt seismic. Every hour, without comment, sent analysts digging through his timeline for coded signals. One archived Instagram story showing the Carters sailing off Ibiza 3 summers earlier suddenly gained 2 million new views. Fans searching for hints of tension in a sunlit hug. Inside court, Kirk's testimony pivoted towards systemic critique. The entertainment engine doesn't run on talent, he said. It runs on access. You want primetime slots, festival headliners, magazine covers? Then you learn quick which corridors are no-fly zones and which egos you're expected to orbit. He painted an industry where gatekeepers swap favors like currency, where silence buys longevity. Combs, he claimed, mastered that economy, trading champagne toasts, charter jet weekends, and hush payments to weave a net so wide even megastars could stumble into it. The judge allowed limited testimony about a 2018 encrypted server, known among Hollywood fixers for housing fire blankets, files quarantined to prevent leaks. An anonymous admin recalled a VIP folder tagged only with initials. Within 24 hours of the folder's creation, the entire server was scorched, wiped beyond forensic recovery. Prosecution suggested that folder contained exactly the footage Kirk described. Defense howled circumstantial. Still, the mental image of powerful hands scrubbing evidence lingered like smoke. During cross-examination, a defense lawyer asked Kirk whether Beyoncé herself had ever confirmed feeling threatened. Kirk shook his head. She doesn't have to, he replied. You watch how her security bubble doubled after 2015. How informal moments vanished, how nobody touches her in public anymore, not even award show hosts guiding her upstairs. That's not diva behavior, that's learned caution. The exchange left jurors exchanging glances. None needed an expert witness to recall Beyoncé's evolution from approachable superstar to near-mythic figure, shielded by choreographed human walls. Another day, another reveal. A former stylist for an A-list tour testified in camera, that he'd overheard crisis management calls referencing D. The letters BN never spoken, but everyone in the room understood. The judge sealed the transcript, citing safety concerns, yet word still leaked that legal teams had spent months preparing protocols, should that mention ever surface publicly. By week's end, the trial not even halfway finished. Subpoena rumors swirled around choreographers, yacht captains, and one Grammy-winning producer who allegedly kept backups of everything he ever filmed. Reporters chasing them found doors slammed, calls bounced, NDAs waved like riot shields. Fan culture entered meltdown mode. One camp insisted Beyoncé was an unwilling pawn, ensnared by a mogul drunk on impunity. Another camp, convinced she could never be victim nor collaborator, labeled the entire narrative misogynoir. Comment sections became trenches where conspiracy theorizers and brand loyalists hurled digital shrapnel. Parkwood eventually issued a 27-word statement. Beyoncé Knowles Carter has never been subject to criminal inquiry. We will not dignify speculative testimony. Our focus remains on artistry and philanthropy. Short, sterile, unyielding, yet its very brevity broadcast panic louder than paragraphs ever could. Then came the most chilling allegation. Kirk claimed that an unnamed Bad Boy Records lieutenant kept a compliance ledger, essentially a black book, noting which industry players owed favors or feared exposure. Names are scored, he said. Green means cooperative, yellow means monitor, red means exploit. Beyoncé had allegedly hovered at yellow until 2015, when a scribbled arrow upgraded her to red. Defense dismissed the ledger as folklore. Kirk countered that he'd held it in his hands 2 years ago at a Miami studio after an engineer, paid late, bitter, left it in plain sight. He couldn't photograph it. Phones were banned in that room too, but he memorized what mattered: dates, color code, and a note beside Beyoncé's initials reading, "Leverage secured." The gallery grew so silent that the fluorescent hum overhead sounded like rushing water. Some jurors shifted, perhaps imagining themselves color-coded in someone else's private ledger one day. Under redirect, the prosecutor asked the kicker, "Mr. Kirk, why expose this now?" His reply was almost a whisper. Because if a predator can convince the world he owns the queen, then nobody else ever had a fighting chance. That line echoed down marble corridors. Well, after court adjourned, evening news anchors quoted it verbatim, calling it the statement that crystallized the moral stakes of the trial. Behind tinted SUV windows, Combs left the courthouse. Shoulders collapsed inward. The swagger that once magnetized red carpets now looked brittle, as though a single wrong headline might snap him in two. His legal team hustled him past microphones. No comment, no eye contact. Yet the storm outside was only gathering mass. Streaming platforms quietly reordered curated playlists, pushing Combs-produced tracks lower to soften algorithm backlash. Brand partners weighed termination clauses. A luxury alcohol label postponed a commercial featuring his voiceover. One by one, revenue streams quivered. Meanwhile, chatter leaked that federal investigators, initially narrow-scoped, were exploring whether silence payments to various insiders constituted obstruction or RICO-style conspiracy. The possibility that Combs' corporate web might unravel in tandem with the criminal case sent shareholders in affiliated ventures scrambling. Days later, Kirk's final courtroom appearance delivered the coup de grace. He opened with a calm observation. This isn't just Combs on trial. It's the system that taught him he could buy any secret. He pointed out that most people in power never need to destroy evidence. They merely convince the world it doesn't exist. He finished with an indictment broader than any single mogul. Artists are told to dream big, but the gatekeepers sitting behind velvet ropes decide which dreams survive. When those gatekeepers hoard compromising moments like trophies, they don't just own individuals, they own culture. When he stepped down, the atmosphere felt different, almost post-storm. Reporters didn't sprint for exits. They drifted, stunned, as though recalibrating their definitions of scandal and victimhood. One juror wiped a tear. Another gripped a rail, knuckles ivory. Outside, a gray horizon promised summer rain. Camera crews panned across the courthouse steps, narrating not just the day's testimony, but the shockwaves radiating into boardrooms and fan forums worldwide. Because if Beyoncé's myth could flicker, no legend was safe, and if Jay-Z's strategic silence might be reread as crisis containment, then every power couple's fairy tale risked footnotes about leverage and hush files. In the days that followed, subpoenas indeed landed like thunderclaps. A retired tour manager received one over breakfast. A choreographer found her slid beneath a studio door. A former yacht security chief opened his mailbox to a federal seal. The trial, once narrowly focused on alleged misconduct by a single man, had become a cavernous inquiry into influence, complicity, and the fragile architecture of celebrity. Fans realized they'd been cheering inside a hall of mirrors, where intimacy could be weaponized, loyalty could be purchased, and silence Golden silence might cost more than any platinum plaque, yet somewhere beneath that avalanche of disclosures, a quieter revelation glimmered. Vulnerability doesn't vanish with success. Icons, even those crowned in Grammys and billions of streams, can still find themselves cornered by someone else's unchecked hunger for control. That thought, more than any salacious headline, rattled the culture awake.